All right, so when you put your memory card into the slot on your computer, this window may pop up. It doesn't always. If it does, it's the autoplay window. And you want to do open folder to view files. Don't do anything else except open folder to view files. Just that. If it does not open, and let's say it doesn't, in either way it's going to take you to the same menu. So if it doesn't open, go to computer, and you'll see that you have the little card here. Yours is going to say Canon, because this one was last used in an icon, so it's going to show that. Then these folders will pop up. There's a miscellaneous folder, almost always, hardly ever a private folder. You don't care about that. DCIM stands for Digital Camera Image something, I forget what it is, but it's where every camera shows that. That's the one you want to click on, that folder. Then you'll see that you have a whole bunch of different folders with names on them. Yours are all going to say Canon because you're using the Canon cameras here. The EOS miscellaneous, ignore that folder. That's nothing. The last thing that you shot will be at the very bottom. Every time you take the camera out and use it again, it creates a new folder. And it has a different number. So the last time you shot will always be the bottom folder. So if I double click on that bottom folder, you're going to see a whole bunch of things pop up here. Okay, so we have a whole bunch of images. Now we want to be able to view our images, so sometimes what pops up is just the list. In order to see it in this upper right hand corner here, you'll see there's a little drop down menu. You click that little drop down menu and you go to where it says large icons. The large icons are thumbnails. So all of the pictures will have little tiny thumbnails of them, and that's what we want. We want the thumbnails of all of our pictures like this. The other ones that when you click on them, you can do extra large icons and see them a little bigger, but the ones we really want to work with is under large icons. We want to be able to see them like this, and that's on that drop down menu right there. So then we're going to take that and move it a little bit of a side now that we have that open. Now, in order to access your S drive, you're going to go to Computer, and you'll see there's a Student Share Drive. That's the S drive. You'll have just two of these. You'll have an H drive and an S drive. You want to double-click on the S drive, and you'll see a photo folder. You want to double-click on the photo folder, and you'll just have one folder with your name on it here. One folder with your name. So you're going to click on that folder with your name on it. Everyone else that has other names here, you're going to just, because I have access to all of your files, all of your S drives, so that's the good part about this. So if I double click here, then I have an open folder. That's like a folder in a file cabinet, or even a drawer in a file cabinet that's all mine, just my stuff. So once that's open, I can take these pictures here and I want to click the ones I took and I want to move them into the folder in my S drive. And the way I do that is I can just click on one and drag it over there. I don't want you to cut and paste it. I don't want you to copy and paste it. I want you just to click and drag. Click and drag, because it makes a copy and it doesn't lose pictures. Sometimes in the middle of cut and pasting, the computer hook gets locked up and you'll lose your images, and we don't want that to happen. So I can just click and drag different pictures that I want to bring in to there one at a time. Or I can hold the control key down and click a few of them. If I hold the control key down, I can click several pictures and move them in all at once. And I let go of the control key, grab one, left mouse click, and pull them in, and you see it's pulling 3 of them in there now. Again, go to the viewing menu and use large icons. Okay, in order to do a bunch in a row, I can do all in one row by clicking on the first one, holding the shift key down, and clicking on the last one. That selects everything in a row here. So if I click and drag that row in now, I have that row all there, and it will copy it in there. So the originals are all still here on the card, but now I have the pictures in my S drive. Once I've taken all the pictures into my S drive, I can close that card, and if I'm using, and if one of my group members needs the card, I can just give it to them now, because all my pictures are in my S drive. They're sitting there right now. So that's fine. So there's my pictures in my S drive. Okay. First thing you want to do is you want to create a folder So go to New Folder. You can either go up here or go to New Folder. Doesn't matter how you do it. And you want to name it this first assignment. So this is the adjective assignment, okay? Because you're going to have folders for every assignment that we do. So now I can click again the first one, hold the Shift key down, click the last one, and click and drag them all into that folder. So now because I need to organize. I need my S drive organized. I need it organized. So you're going to have, when this class ends, about 10 or 11 folders with different assignment names on them. So right now I have the adjective folder in there. So when I double click on that, there's all the pictures that I just put in there, and that's all for the adjective assignment. Now I can come through and delete those that I don't want or whatever, because they're all sitting there. But you want to make sure you keep them for a while until you figure out what you're going to do. Okay, so that's how we pull them into our S drive, and that's how we're going to save all of our pictures are in our S drive. So now let's say I want to pick one of these and I want to pull it into Photoshop. So what I want to do is just right click on any of the thumbnails and go to Open With. Now, if someone on the computer has recently opened Photoshop, it will be there if you right click. Otherwise, you'll have to go to choose the default program and go to Adobe, and I'll show you how to do that if you need that specifically. But go to Adobe Photoshop and CS6, and it's going to open. And this is the desktop in Photoshop. Okay, this is what's called the workspace in Photoshop. So then the image is brought into Photoshop like this. What Photoshop does when you open an image, I'm going to open another one. So I'm going to go back to the computer, go back to the S drive, go back to my folder. Go back to here, and I'm going to open another one. And let's say I open this one. So once I bring images in, you'll see that they are all at the top here. They have the image number. And those little tabs, if I click on the tab, I can see the different images. Sometimes you can have, 10 or 20 of them across here. This is what Photoshop is doing right now is called docking. It's docking the photos at the top. If you want them not to dock them, and that's going to happen when we do compositing or when we combine pictures, is you just hold that tab and pull it down, and it undocks those pictures. To redock them, you just pull it back up and it goes back up there and it redocks them. It doesn't matter how you do it, but if you're more comfortable having them undocked, you can do that either way. Okay, so now we have the picture on the workspace in Photoshop. Now Photoshop is a little intimidating because it has all these things that you don't know yet, but you're going to learn a bunch of them. We're going to start kind of small because I just want you to get used to the workspace and what it looks like. The first thing we want to do is make sure 2 windows are open in Photoshop. So under the window menu up here, if I click on that, I want to make sure my history palette window is checked and my layers palette is checked. I want both of those to make sure I have both of those. So there's the layers menu, and here's my history menu. All the others are some default ones we don't really care about right now, but the main 2 we care about are the layers palette and the history palette. The history palette because it allows me to go back a step or 2 or 4 and see what you've done. And to undo something, I can fix it. And you can see what you've done also. It allows you to go back a few steps and check stuff out. The layers palette is because this is what Photoshop is built on, is having layers. The ability to use layers in Photoshop is the beauty of it. The ability to put something on top of your background layer. You'll see that this says background right now here on the screen. It says background right here, and that's this layer, but we're going to put layers on top of it that are called adjustment layers that allow us to adjust things in Photoshop. Once we've done that, we can come back to that layer, which is really cool, and we can adjust certain things at any time. That is what the beauty of Photoshop is. So now I have this image sitting here. The very, very first thing I want to do is always to crop the image. Always to crop the image. Almost every picture can benefit from being cropped. And I've been shooting for 45 years. I crop what we call in the camera while I shoot, but still my pictures benefit from being cropped. So that's the very first thing we do. So over here on this tools menu, you see this tools palette here? It can move. It's usually on the left side by default. You can move it anywhere you want. But all of these little tools have little icons on them that kind of show what they are. If you just take your cursor and just hang over any of these tools, it'll tell you what it does. This says lasso tool. There's the crop tool. There's this healing brush tool, clone stamp, eraser, paint bucket. So those tools, they have names, but they don't really tell you what they do. So you're going to learn what a lot of them do. Also, next to the tools are little arrows. Those little arrows are for drop-down menus to tell you, anytime there's an arrow, it tells you that there's another drop-down menu behind those. To get to that, you right-click on that arrow. And you'll see there's a whole bunch of other things behind here. If I right-click on this arrow, there's a couple. If I right-click on this arrow, there's several of them behind there that I can use. Okay? The ones that are used most often will be the ones where the icons show here. Okay? Right now we care about the cropping tool, and you'll see it's shaped like two L brackets because the way that Photoshop designs their icons are for how things used to be done before Photoshop was here. Like the clone stamp, you'll see looks like a stamp, a rubber stamp. The eraser looks like a blackboard eraser or a whiteboard eraser. The paint bucket looks like a paint bucket. The cropping tool is two L-shaped brackets. That's how we used to do things. Once we click on that, you'll see that you get this dotted line around your image, and then you get what are called handles in the corners and in the middle. They're little like bracket things here. Those are called handles. That allows you to move in or out to crop the picture. Once I do that, you see that it turned into this grid of 9 squares. So it's the image divided horizontally and vertically into thirds using the rule of thirds. That's the most common and most effective composition technique there is, used in almost any art. And so Photoshop does that by default. So I can come in and I can say, you know, well, do I want to center it? Maybe not. So I'm going to maybe move it over here so it's a little bit off center. Maybe I'll use the rule of thirds and make it more off center here. But I don't want to lose that because I like that bud. So I can change this a bunch of different ways depending on how I want to crop it. Okay? Or because I want to get rid of that white over there. I don't like that white on the side. But I think I'm going to basically just center this one. I think it will work centered. Now, with Photoshop, everything you do, you can do several ways. So I can hit enter and it'll crop it, or I can hit this little check mark in the upper corner here. You see that check mark? That means apply it. Apply whatever we're doing, or commit it, and then cancel. But you can either hit enter or you can hit that. So I'm going to hit the little check mark and you'll see now that my image is cropped. The default on the tools here is the top tool, which has no drop-down menu, and that's the move tool. So whenever you're not using anything, come back to the move tool and use that as the default. So there it is on there. So now we've cropped this image. Okay? Now if I come back to my history tool palette, I can see where I came over, I did the quick selection, which I didn't use. I opened it and I cropped it. So I can go back and see the difference. Did we make it better by cropping it? I think so. You guys think so? Okay, so we made it better by cropping it. Now, the next thing we want to do is on our layers palette, these are called windows or palettes. The middle and the bottom here are a bunch of icons. The one we care about looks like a yin-yang symbol, half black, half white. If we click on that, a menu pops up. This is the adjustment layers. It's going to add a layer to the picture that you can use for adjusting your picture. The two we care about today are levels and brightness and contrast. So we're going to click on the levels menu. So there's our levels menu, and we see that we have here a histogram. The histogram is the distribution of pixels throughout your image, from the highlight areas to the shadow areas. You see on the right-hand side here, this is a white arrow, this is a gray arrow, and this is a black arrow. The black area is the shadow areas, sorry. The gray one is the midtones, and the white ones are the highlight areas in your picture. And so this is very evenly distributed, so we're going to just leave it that way. On this histogram, you can see that the pixels are not so evenly distributed. There's hardly any shadow areas. And there's some pixels that are empty here on the histogram. If I take that slider and I move it over and get past that, then I can darken up that image. So if you see that before and after, or turn the eyeball on and off on that histogram, the eyeball in Photoshop means that you can see or unsee the adjustment. Okay? So here we can see what a difference it made in that picture, right? It took away some of that kind of foggy quality to it and made it better. So in this picture, this one utilizes the histogram better than the one we were working on here, which the pixels are so evenly distributed in. Okay? So what we care about, though, is finding out if the pixels are evenly distributed. In this case, they are. So I'm still going to leave that layer there. It's okay to have that layer there, but we didn't do anything to it because it didn't really help it. We did a little bit. We darkened it slightly, but not much. And on the left side here, on the Layers palette in Photoshop, you see eyeballs. So I can turn a layer on or off by clicking on that eyeball. So you can see what we did when we changed the levels on that one. Okay, turn that layer on and off by that little eyeball there. So now the second thing we want to do in any picture is go down to the adjustment layer again, and we're going to click a new layer, and we're going to go to brightness and contrast. So then when we have brightness and contrast, we get this slider up here. The brightness makes the image lighter or darker. The contrast makes the difference between the light areas and the dark areas more pronounced. Dark areas will go darker and light areas will go lighter when you do more contrast. In this picture, it's already very contrasty. We have very strong highlights and strong shadows, so I think we want to go less contrast in here. So I'm going to pull that down. I'm going to make it a little bit less bright. So come down a little, maybe move the contrast up just a hair. And then again, I can use the eyeball on and off to see the difference. And we see how we got more detail in that background back here. If I turn that eyeball on and off, we got more detail in the highlight areas behind the flower. See that difference? So now I come back to the Layers palette here, and you'll see that I have two layers on top of the flower. And I can turn any of these layers off and get back to where my original is. Okay? Ben and Chris, pay attention, please. So I can turn those on or off, and you see that I can get back to my original. So I'm going to keep those on to show how much better we made that picture. Once I have it how I want it, then I'm going to save it. So I'm going to go to File, Save As. Now, I want to, never hit Save, just Save. You're always going to go to File, Save As. And you want to save it to your S drive. So that's under Computer, find your S drive, under Photo, find your name. Find that folder that you're going to save it into, and you want to save the name here. So the name, we're going to change it to Flower. Okay, now in this drop-down menu here where it says Format, see down below here where it says Format? We have all of these different formats or file extensions we can save this under. We're always going to be saving our work as we work on it as TIFFs, .tif. That's a TIFF. So we're going to click on that last one, and you'll see that it shows TIFF in here. Okay? Now when we put our file name in, we don't add any extensions to it. Let Photoshop do that. Let Photoshop put the extensions in. You don't do it. Let Photoshop do that. And you just put the name on it. You just want to make sure when you name something that you never name it with a period in it. Never name it with a period in it. So I'm going to say Save now. And then it's going to bring me two more menus up. One says TIFF options for image compression. Always leave the defaults and just say OK. Then it's going to say including layers will increase file size. OK, we want the layers in here. So we're going to say OK. So now we can close that image out. Once it's finished saving, I can delete it. And I can come back to my S drive, and you'll see I have the original JPEG here, and I have the one I fixed with a new file name here. So we have and if I click and open this again, the TIFF, I'm going to open it again in Photoshop. and you're going to see that my layers are here. They're still here. We want to be able to save the layers in Photoshop. That's super critical, because those are how we get back to fixing our picture, especially when we do some compositing or when we combine photos or put different pictures into another picture. We want to be able to save all of our layers and get back to it. And it's also a way that I can come back in and I can fix something for you or help you fix something. So that's how we save it. Okay, now I can close out and it's still there. That's the TIFF is saved in my S drive in a folder that says adjectives in it.